Hey, this is CB Smallwood, and you are watching Mental Junk Food, where we talk about all things comics, pop culture, sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between that fits into the world of geekdom. And today, we're going to do a comic book review. And it's going to be a review about the Immortal Men. Now, for those that don't know, the Immortal Men is part of the line of comics that's coming out from DC. That's called the New Age of Heroes, which is connected to dark matter and all these other things. And when I say dark matter, I don't mean the actual weird stuff that's floating in space, but rather the comic book dark matter. So, the Immortal Men, 23-page comic book, is headed up by artist Jim Lee and also Ryan Benjamin, written by James Tynion. If you want a really brief synopsis or just a brief overview, I guess, would be the best way to put it, of what the Immortal Men is actually about, I would I would say the Immortal Men is basically Matrix meets the X-Men meets Highlander. As far as the Matrix part, it's, the surrealism and there's the world we know and the world that we don't. X-Men part of it is you have people with powers that don't fit in with society. They're kind of underground and hidden. And then the Highlander part is you have all these immortals all over the place, and they come together to do battle till they can get to the final singular one Highlander or immortal, whatever. In some ways or another, each one of these aspects kind of fits into the puzzle pieces that is the Immortal Men. Now, before we get started, I'm going to be all over the place when I'm going to do this review. I've done like 3 takes of this now because I feel like each take that I do just doesn't do it justice. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little too mean with it. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little too nice with it. So whatever comes out my mouth, no matter how twangy my accent comes out or how much I sound like a broken record, what you get is what you're going to get in this review. All right, disclaimer over. So when we look at this cover, just look at this cover, the Immortal Men. When I think of Jim Lee, okay, and what he's capable of, I look at the X-Men. I look at what he did with Wildcats and Death Blow. I look at what he did with Fantastic Four and what he did with Divine Right. I look at what he did with Batman and Superman. And then, somewhere in his career, Jim Lee gives us the Immortal Men. And I was really looking forward to this book. Really was. And then, before I even read this comic, I looked at the cover and I just thought to myself, oh boy, this is a little disappointing, I have to say. And my personal opinion, because all art and writing is subjective, it's in the eye of the beholder, but in this eyes and in these ears and everything in between, I really didn't enjoy this book at all. So let's get into the actual interiors of what's going on and discussing purely story at this point. The main character of this book is a kid named Caden Park. And Caden Park is basically going on his hero's journey. For those that don't know, the hero's journey is something that's been with us since times of old, where basically there's a boy who is thrust into some situation where he has to rescue a princess or solve some type of problem that's threatening his life or his village or loved ones. And it's usually unwillingly, and along the way gets into this adventure where he has a mentor or mentors helping him through it, and he learns things about himself, and then he faces his greatest foe. He conquers that foe, he becomes a man, he comes back home, a conqueror, king of the hill, and cue the music, okay? And the best example of the hero's journey is Star Wars in a galaxy far away, okay? The original trilogy, specifically, where you have Luke Skywalker, who's a farmer, who later becomes Kid on the Run, who later becomes a space pirate, and then who goes on to be like the space savior. So that is the perfect example of the hero's journey, and Caden Park in this story is on his hero's journey. The next thing I want to say about Caden Park, and he's the main character of this book, for the most part. And he is like one of many examples, in my opinion, of really poor character development. Or maybe I'm just looking at it wrong, but I have no emotional investment in this character whatsoever. He is He's very flat and he's very dull. The only thing that really makes him interesting is the power that he has where he has visions. And these visions are basically of this place called the campus. Well, the specific name of this place is the campus, the domain of action, the fifth house of immortals, which is located 1 mile beneath Philadelphia. This is the headquarters of the immortals. Or maybe the way I'm supposed to read it, the way that it's written, it's the campus, the domain of action, the fifth house of the immortals, 1 mile, located 1 mile beneath Philadelphia. I mean, when you read it like that, that's pretty epic. It's a bit of a mouthful, but, it's still cool. Comics are supposed to be fun, right? So, he has visions of this place, and this is basically like the training compound for all future immortal men and current immortal men and that sort of thing. It's usually like a brief vision. And he also sees a vision of the immortal men being massacred. And as we learn, as the story unfolds, it's actually legit. The immortal men are being massacred. And who are they being massacred? Massacred? My country's coming out. Who are they being massacred by? By this group of people that I assume that their name is Conquest. Now, I could be wrong on that because I've only read through this book once, and I don't think I'm going to do it again. But this guy, who's part of this group called Conquest, his name is The Hunt. Now, The Hunt is actually a pretty cool character in terms of the way that he was designed and everything like that, sketched out. Basically, he is like the ultimate hunter. He's a guy who, when he slays his enemies, he's able to retain some of their essence and some of their memories, and it actually extends his life. And I'm not sure if he drinks their blood or if he just whiffs their blood, like, he sticks his fingers up his nose and gets a good whiff of that blood, and yeah, I'm feeling immortal today. Maybe that's what he does. Either way, it's still cool. It's interesting, and he gets supercharged from it, and it's a cool concept because let's say like he's looking for some people and he kills a guy who knows where they are. He instantly knows where they are because he absorbs that guy's essence and a little bit of their memories and stuff. And so when he's hunting down people, that's a good way to track people. So pretty cool character. We're also introduced to the leader of Conquest, which is the Infinite Woman. I love that. And that is a cool name, the Infinite Woman. Really cool. And she has a cool looking design. But, the Infinite Woman, her big detractor is she's another character in a long list of characters in this book that just kind of falls flat as far as giving a hoot with what the Infinite Woman has to say. I mean, I can't explain it. It's just, it's kind of like she's just thrown in there and we're expected to, like, okay, this is the bad guy. Let's get excited about what's going to happen here. I just don't feel it. I can't explain it. I can't put it into words for you why I find this character so one-dimensional. She's cool looking, though. She's a really cool looking character with a cool looking name. That doesn't mean that she can't be fixed later on. But as far as like this first issue in this story, no thank you. Moving on from that. So basically this Brotherhood of Evil Mutants / Conquest rival group of immortals, they've went and killed like all the immortal men except for like 4 guys that are on the run. And these 4 guys are on a mission to find who? Caden Park. So, like I said before, Caden Park's on his hero's journey, yada, yada, yada. Later on in this book, Caden Park is having to see a therapist where, he's trying to work out these issues of him having these visions, like I mentioned before. And the therapist kind of chalks it up as, hey, you saw Superman once when you took a field trip or whatever to Metropolis, and now you've been enamored with him ever since. And that's all these visions are. It harkens back to that, As the story progresses, we get introduced to his parents. At first, I must confess, I thought that they were his grandparents, but whatever. That's kind of irrelevant. The thing that is relevant, though, is that his parents, I find them boring and dull. Maybe people are supposed to find their parents boring and dull, but like when I think of supporting cast characters, like for example, Aunt May is just an interesting, charming little character. Shoot, when you think of the Andy Griffith Show, and you think of Aunt Bee and Barney Fife and that little boy that runs around, all the cast of characters, you care about every one of them. Think of like Batman's Alfred. And a good supporting cast of characters make your show, your movie, your comic book, they make it worth watching, worth seeing, worth reading. If you don't have a good supporting cast, I dare say it, you probably don't have a good book to begin with. And I feel like that his parents are one-dimensional. I feel like Caden Park is one-dimensional. Everybody is pretty much one-dimensional in this comic book. They're dull to me. I don't know why. Toward the end of the book, you finally get introduced to the Rogue, a group of immortal men who are trying to follow the final death wish of their fallen leader, which is to find his kid, Caden Park, who's going to save the world. And they save Caden Park toward the end of the issue from something that's happened to him where he's being attacked by these Daemonite-looking creatures. And when I say Daemonite, I mean more like the ones in Wildcats. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. But basically they look like just kind of different shaped monsters, And he's being attacked in a subway. Okay, and the Immortal Men show up and they put a stop to it. End of first issue. So that's pretty much what happens from the first issue from beginning to end. One of the reasons I'm being so critical over this first issue is because it is a first issue. You should always put your best foot forward, The whole idea behind the new age of heroes is that, it's the masterclass of DC artists. It is artist-centric line of books, meaning that the art is supposed to be over the top. It's supposed to be awesome. Now, granted, Jim Lee on his worst day is still probably better than most artists on their best day. But having said that, folks, I still hold Jim Lee. Me personally, I hold him to a higher standard because this is not his best work in my opinion. And I'm also disappointed at the fact that he didn't even draw half of this book. Now, they got a really good guy to do the job, which is Ryan Benjamin. But I have to say I'm disappointed in Ryan Benjamin's art in this too because I feel like it's a bit rushed. If you look at Ryan Benjamin's stuff online, he is a really, really, really good artist. I think what ended up happening, in my opinion, Jim Lee probably had to bump up the deadline for getting this first issue out, and it just wasn't happening for one reason or another. And he's like, oh crap, I need to get this thing finished. So what they ended up doing, probably, in my opinion, they got on the phone, they called up Ryan Benjamin, it's like, hey, I'm in a tight pinch, Ryan, can you, draw the second half of this book? And he's like, oh, yeah, how much time do I got to do this in? And more likely, they probably gave him 2 weeks or something like that. That's just my opinion. And so whatever time frame Ryan Benjamin had to work on this is probably very little. And if you're on a tight deadline, you got to put out what you got to put out. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't fault Ryan Benjamin. I do fault Jim Lee, though, because he's the king of the company. He's King Kong. He rules that domain. And he sets the example. So the art in the book is lackluster. Jim Lee did make sure that he drew all the cool parts in the book, though, everything involving the Immortal Men. To summarize my problems with this comic book, quite simply, I felt like the art was lackluster. I don't feel like it lived up to the potential of the creative team that were involved. I feel like the characters are one-dimensional and very flat and very uninteresting on all levels, and that you just don't have any emotional investment into what happens to them. You just don't care. When you compare that in contrast to other books such as Damage, Sideways, and the Terrifics, you care about what happens to those characters, right away in their first issues. And I feel like they dropped the ball somehow on this. The other thing that annoys me is the fact that Jim Lee did not finish drawing this comic book. And despite the fact having probably plenty of time, he could have made all the time in the world. He could have probably even delayed the release of any of the New Age of Heroes books so he could have time to finish this first issue. But yet, he didn't, and he had to have help finishing the second half of it, despite being billed as the artist for this book. And the writing, I just felt like it was a little bit... I don't know. I don't think overly dramatic is the right word because sometimes it's pretty dull. I just kind of feel like it tries to be grandiose in some ways, but it just doesn't feel believable. It doesn't even feel like a fun comic, honestly. It doesn't feel fun to me. I think Michael Bay could have probably wrote a better comic book. Oh, there's gonna be some people that's gonna love that a little bit, but I'm being honest here. Just really disappointed. Maybe when I go back to read this comic book for a second reading, maybe I will like it better. But my initial reaction upon reading this comic and looking at it and everything, it's just a big letdown to me. Now, maybe I had my expectations kind of raised kind of high, but I don't know. I kind of felt like I should have walked away with something. Okay, now we've come to the point where it's time to tally up the stars. How many stars does the Immortal Men get out of 5 stars? Well, drum roll please. It gets 2 stars. It is a 2-star book in my opinion. Now, you may think it's a 5-star book. If that's what you think, cool. But this review gives it 2 stars. So folks, I got to end this review on that note. I have actually plenty more to say and a lot more that I left out. But for the sake of time, we better end it now. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What did you think about reading the book? Was you disappointed? Did it meet your expectations? Are you looking forward to more issues? I'd really like to know. Please let me know in the comments section down below. I do read the comments, and each and every single one of them. And if you like this video, please remember to hit that like button, and remember to subscribe and follow and all that good stuff to be kept up to date to all my latest shenanigans. Until next time, this is Stevie Smallwood, and I will see you in the next video.